Jake Morrison stared out the shuttle window at the massive space station ahead. The thing was huge, bigger than any city he had ever seen back on Earth. It sparkled like a jewel against the black of space, all smooth curves and glowing lights. Everything about it screamed wealth and comfort. "First time seeing the council station?" asked Lisa Hayes from the seat next to him. She was looking at her tablet, reading through files about the alien species they were about to meet. "Yeah," Jake said. "Looks like they built it more for show than function." Lisa nodded. She had been thinking the same thing. The station was beautiful, but it looked fragile, like it had never been built to handle any real problems. Back home, human space stations were built tough. They had to be. Space was dangerous, and Earth was not a gentle world. Jake was a big man, even by human standards. He had spent 20 years in the military before becoming a ship captain. His hands were scarred from work and fighting. His face showed the lines that came from making hard choices. He wore his dress uniform today, but anyone could see he was more comfortable in combat gear. Lisa was smaller, but just as tough. She had studied alien life forms on dozens of worlds that would kill most people in hours. Her skin was tanned from radiation that would cook most aliens. Her eyes were sharp and missed nothing. She carried herself like someone who had survived things that should have killed her. The shuttle pilot, a nervous young ensign named Pete, cleared his throat. "Sir, we're getting close. The council says we should dock at Bay 94. "Copy that," Jake said. He looked back at Lisa. "You ready for this?" "As ready as anyone can be for walking into a room full of aliens who think we're monsters," she said with a small smile. The truth was, the Galactic Council was scared of humans. They had good reason to be. Humans came from Earth, which the Council had labeled a Class 12 death world. That was the worst rating they had. Most alien species would die on Earth in less than a day. The gravity was too strong. The air was toxic to them. The weather was violent. The whole planet was covered in life forms that killed and ate each other, and humans called it home. Even worse, humans were spreading out to other worlds just like Earth, worlds that the Council marked as impossible to live on. Humans built cities on planets with crushing gravity and poison air. They mined asteroids and radiation fields that would melt alien ships. They seemed to enjoy living in places that would terrify other species. The Council had finally decided they needed to meet with humans face to face. They needed to understand what humanity wanted. More importantly, they needed to figure out how to keep humans from taking over the galaxy by accident. The shuttle docked with a soft bump. Jake and Lisa gathered their things and walked to the airlock. Pete stayed behind to watch the ship. He looked relieved that he did not have to go to the meeting. The airlock opened, and Jake stepped into the council station. The first thing he noticed was how clean everything was. The walls were made of some kind of white metal that seemed to glow with its own light. The air smelled like flowers and rain. The gravity was light, maybe 3/4 of what he was used to. A small alien waited for them. It looked like a cross between a butterfly and a crystal sculpture. Its wings were thin and clear, and its body seemed to be made of living glass. When it spoke, its voice sounded like wind chimes. "Welcome, humans," it said. "I am Guide Velnara. I will show you to the observation area." Jake and Lisa followed the alien through halls that looked more like an art museum than a space station. Everything was smooth and perfect. There were no rough edges anywhere, no signs of wear or damage, no hint that this place had ever seen any kind of trouble. Other aliens moved through the halls around them. Jake saw beings made of light, creatures that looked like walking trees, and things that might have been made of living water. All of them moved slowly and gracefully. None of them looked like they had ever been in a fight. "How many species are in the council?" Lisa asked their guide. 847 member species, Velnara replied. "We have maintained peace for over 3,000 years. Jake raised an eyebrow. 3,000 years of peace sounded nice, but it also sounded impossible. In his experience, peace was something you had to fight for. It did not just happen by itself. They walked past a group of aliens who stopped talking when they saw the humans. Jake heard them whispering in their own languages. He did not need a translator to know they were talking about him and Lisa. The way they looked at the humans was like looking at wild animals in a zoo. "The observation area is just ahead," Velnara said. "You will be able to watch the council session from there. The other observers are already waiting." They entered a large room with a wall of clear material that looked down into an even larger space. Jake could see the council chamber below. It was enormous, with seats for hundreds of beings. Most of the seats were full. Other observers stood around the room. They all looked as delicate and refined as everything else Jake had seen. When the humans entered, the room went quiet. All eyes turned to look at them. Jake felt like a bear that had wandered into a butterfly garden. He was twice the size of most of the aliens in the room, and his military uniform made him look even more out of place. Lisa looked more comfortable, but Jake could see her taking mental notes about everything she saw. "The session will begin soon," Velnara said. "Your species is item 847 on today's agenda, last on the list." Jake was not surprised. It was a clear message about what the council thought of humanity. They were not important enough to be dealt with first. Jake looked down at the council chamber and saw hundreds of alien beings taking their seats. They moved like they had all the time in the world. Everything about them suggested a life of comfort and safety. These were beings who had never known real danger. Lisa moved to stand next to him. "What do you think?" she asked quietly. Jake watched an alien that looked like a walking flower arrange itself in a seat designed for beings without spines. "I think we're about to learn why the galaxy has stayed peaceful for 3,000 years, he said. "And I think they're about to learn why that might not last much longer." Below them, the council session was about to begin. Jake and Lisa were here as observers, but Jake had a feeling they were going to end up as much more than that. The galaxy was about to meet humanity, and nobody was going to leave this meeting the same as they came in. The council chamber was even more impressive from the inside. Jake watched as hundreds of alien beings filled the massive space below. The chamber stretched for miles with seats arranged in perfect circles that went up and up like a giant bowl. Each seat was different, designed for whatever species sat in it. A massive alien made of what looked like living energy floated to the center of the chamber. When it spoke, its voice filled the entire space without any speakers that Jake could see. "I am Counselor HFY of the Ethereal Collective," the energy being said. "This session of the Galactic Council will now begin. We have many items to discuss today." Lisa pulled out her tablet and started taking notes. She watched each alien species carefully, trying to figure out what they were and where they came from. Most of them looked like they had never seen a hard day in their lives. The first item on the agenda was a trade dispute between two species Jake had never heard of. The problem seemed simple enough. One group was not paying the other group for some kind of rare crystals, but instead of just fixing the problem, the council spent 2 hours talking about the deeper cultural meanings of the disagreement. Jake watched alien after alien stand up to give long speeches about understanding and patience. They talked about the importance of seeing both sides of every issue. They suggested setting up committees to study the problem for the next 6 months. "This is insane," Jake whispered to Lisa. "Just make them pay what they owe." Lisa nodded but kept taking notes. She was watching how the aliens talked to each other. Everything was so polite and careful. Nobody raised their voice. Nobody got angry. It was like watching a very boring play. The second item was about space pirates attacking trade ships near the Vrek system. This got Jake's attention. Pirates were a real problem that needed real solutions. He leaned forward to listen. Blue-skinned alien with 4 arms stood up to speak. "The Vrek's Confederation has lost 12 ships in the past month," it said. "Our traders are afraid to use the main shipping routes. We need help." Jake expected the council to talk about sending ships to hunt down the pirates. Instead, they started discussing why the pirates might be attacking in the first place. "Perhaps these pirates are simply misunderstood," said an alien that looked like a walking tree. "Maybe they are just trying to express their frustration with the current economic system." Another alien, this one covered in beautiful scales that changed color as it spoke, added, "We should send cultural ambassadors to speak with them. I am sure we can reach a peaceful solution." Jake felt his hands tighten into fists. These pirates were killing people, and the council wanted to have a chat with them about their feelings. The Vrex representative tried to explain that the pirates had already killed hundreds of traders. But the other council members just nodded and talked about the importance of understanding different points of view. "What if we set up a Harmony Facilitation Center?" suggested a small alien with big eyes. "We could invite the pirates to come and share their concerns in a safe environment." Jake looked at Lisa. She was shaking her head in disbelief. The council was treating cold-blooded murder like it was a disagreement between children. The debate went on for another hour. The council decided to form a study group to look into the root causes of piracy. They would spend 6 months writing a report about why people became pirates. Then they would write another report about how to talk to pirates without hurting their feelings. The Vrex representative sat down looking defeated. Jake could see the frustration in its posture. While the council spent months studying the problem, more traders would die. Item after item followed the same pattern. Every problem was treated like a philosophical puzzle instead of something that needed to be fixed. A war between two small systems was handled by sending meditation teachers. A food shortage was addressed by forming a committee to study why people needed to eat so much. Jake had been in the military for 20 years. He had seen real problems that needed real solutions. Watching the council debate was like watching people argue about the best way to put out a fire while the building burned down around them. "How do these people get anything done?" he asked, Lisa quietly. "I don't think they do," she replied. "I think they just talk until the problems go away on their own." But Jake knew that most problems did not go away on their own. They got worse, and the worse they got, the harder they were to fix later. During a break in the session, some of the other observers came over to talk to the humans. They seemed curious but also nervous. Jake noticed that none of them got too close. "You are from the death world called Earth, yes?" asked an alien that looked like it was made of crystal and light. "We have heard stories about your planet, very frightening stories." "Earth's not that bad," Lisa said with a smile. "You just have to know how to live there. But the reports say your world has poisonous air and crushing gravity," said another observer. This one looked like a giant butterfly with way too many eyes. "The air's fine if you're human," Jake said. "And the gravity keeps us in shape." The aliens looked at each other like Jake had just said something impossible. To them, a world where you had to be tough to survive was like a nightmare. They came from planets where everything was safe and comfortable. "What about the predators?" asked the crystal alien. "The reports say your world is full of animals that hunt and kill other animals." "Yeah, we have those," Lisa said. "That's why we learn to be smarter and tougher than they are." The aliens seemed shocked that humans talked about dangerous animals like they were just part of life. On their worlds, the most dangerous thing they faced was probably a flower that grew too fast. When the session started again, Jake paid attention to how the different species acted. The ones from garden worlds moved slowly and carefully. They spoke in soft voices and seemed afraid of saying anything that might upset someone else. The few species that came from harder worlds were different. They sat up straighter. They looked around more. They acted like people who had learned to watch for danger. But even the tough-looking aliens seemed soft compared to humans. Jake realized that Earth might be the hardest world in the galaxy. Maybe that was why the council was so scared of humans. They had never met anyone who came from a place where you had to fight just to stay alive. As the day went on, Jake started to understand something important. The council had been peaceful for 3,000 years not because they were good at solving problems, but because they had never faced any real problems. They lived in a galaxy where the worst thing that happened was a trade dispute or a cultural misunderstanding. But Jake knew that peaceful times did not last forever. Somewhere out there were people who did not care about harmony and understanding. People who took what they wanted by force. And when those people showed up, all the meditation and cultural exchange programs in the galaxy would not stop them. Jake looked at Lisa and saw that she was thinking the same thing. They were not just observing the council. They were looking at a civilization that had forgotten how to defend itself. A civilization that was about to learn a very hard lesson about the real universe. The session continued, with the council debating problems that could be solved in minutes if someone just made a decision and stuck with it. But nobody wanted to make decisions. They wanted to study and discuss and understand. Jake just hoped they would have time to learn before something came along that could not be reasoned with. After lunch, the council finally reached item 847 on their list. Jake felt the entire chamber go quiet as Counselor HFY announced the topic. "We will now discuss the human situation," the energy being said. The way it spoke made it sound like humans were a disease that needed to be cured. Jake watched as a holographic display appeared in the center of the chamber. It showed Earth spinning slowly in space. To the council members, it looked like a ball of death covered in storms and violence. "Humans come from what we have classified as a Class 12 death world," announced Counselor Kresh of the Gentle Dawn Alliance. "This alien looked like a walking flower made of silver petals. This is the most dangerous rating we have ever given to any planet." The display zoomed in to show Earth's surface. Jake saw images of hurricanes, earthquakes, volcanoes, and forest fires. The council had put together a collection of every natural disaster they could find. They made Earth look like the worst place in the universe. "The gravity on this world is so strong that most of our member species would be crushed flat in minutes," Kresh continued. "The atmosphere contains gases that are toxic to 98% of known life forms. The weather systems are so violent that they regularly destroy everything in their path." Jake almost laughed. The council was describing a normal Tuesday on Earth like it was the end of the world. The display changed to show human cities. But instead of showing the peaceful parts, it focused on military bases, factories, and construction sites. Everything looked dirty and dangerous compared to the clean perfection of the council worlds. "Even worse," said another council member, "humans do not avoid these dangers. They seem to seek them out. Look at this." New images appeared showing human activities. There were people climbing mountains, diving in the ocean, and working in conditions that would kill most aliens instantly. The council showed footage of humans working in space, on asteroids, and on planets with crushing gravity and poison air. "Most disturbing of all," Kresh said, "is their approach to conflict resolution." The display showed scenes from human history. Wars, battles, and military operations filled the air above the council chamber. The aliens watched in horror as humans fought each other with weapons that could level cities. Instead of learning to avoid conflict, humans appear to have learned how to fight more efficiently while maintaining their civilization, Kresh explained. "This is completely outside our understanding of how intelligent species should develop." Jake noticed that the council was not showing the whole picture. They did not show human art, music, or literature. They did not show human families, schools, or hospitals. They only showed the parts that made humans look like monsters. But Jake also noticed something else. Every single thing the council was afraid of was exactly what made humans good at surviving. The dangerous world that created tough people. The conflicts that taught humans how to solve problems quickly. The harsh environments that made humans adaptable. "We must address the question of human expansion," Counselor HFY said. "Humans are spreading to worlds that we have marked as uninhabitable. They are taking planets that no sane species would want." This got a reaction from some council members. Several aliens started talking at once, their different languages creating a noise like wind chimes in a storm. "If I may," Lisa said, standing up in the observation area. The entire council chamber went silent. Lisa had not asked for permission to speak, and observers were supposed to stay quiet, but her voice carried clearly through the chamber. "Council members," Lisa began, "I think there are some misunderstandings here that I can clear up." Counselor HFY flickered with what might have been annoyance. "Humans are observers only. You do not have speaking privileges." "Then give me speaking privileges," Lisa said simply. "Because right now you're making decisions about my species based on information that's only half true." Jake smiled. Lisa was doing what humans did best, cutting through the nonsense and getting to the point. After a few minutes of debate, the council decided to let Lisa speak. She walked down to the main floor, and Jake noticed that several aliens moved away. from her as she passed. She was not that big, but to them she probably looked like a predator. "You're right about Earth being dangerous," Lisa said, once she reached the speaking area. "But you're missing the point. Earth didn't make us violent, it made us adaptable." She gestured to the holographic display. "You show our storms and earthquakes like they're proof that we're monsters. But humans learned to predict storms and build houses that survive earthquakes. You see problems. We see things to overcome." The council members listened, but Jake could see they did not really understand what Lisa was saying. To them, the smart thing to do with a dangerous environment was to leave it. The idea of staying and adapting was foreign. "You talk about our conflicts," Lisa continued, "but you don't mention that we stopped having world wars and started exploring space instead. You don't mention that we learned to work together when we faced bigger challenges." She pointed to the images of human military operations. "You see weapons and think we're violent, but those same weapons protect colonies on worlds where the weather could kill you in seconds. Those soldiers rescue people from disasters and keep trade routes safe from pirates." Jake noticed that the Vrex representative perked up at the mention of pirates. Here was someone talking about actually stopping pirates instead of understanding them. "Most importantly," Lisa said, "you're worried about us taking your worlds. But look at what we actually colonize." The display changed to show recent human colonies. They were all on worlds that the Council had marked as uninhabitable. Planets with toxic air, crushing gravity, or deadly radiation. Places where no other species could survive. "We don't want your garden worlds," Lisa explained. "We can't even breathe your air without filters. Your gravity is too weak for our bones to stay healthy. We're interested in the places you've written. Off is impossible." This caused another stir in the council. Jake could see aliens looking at each other in confusion. They had always assumed that everyone would want the same comfortable worlds they preferred. "The real question," Lisa said, "is not whether humans are dangerous. The question is whether the galaxy is as safe as you think it is." She gestured to the chamber around them. "You've had 3,000 years of peace. That's wonderful. But peace isn't something that just happens. It's something that has to be maintained." Jake saw several council members shift uncomfortably. They did not like where this conversation was going. "What happens when you meet a species that doesn't want to talk?" Lisa asked. "What happens when you run into people who take what they want by force? What happens when your meditation circles and cultural exchange programs don't work?" The chamber was completely silent now. Lisa had asked the question that none of them wanted to think about. "Humans aren't your enemies," Lisa said. "We're the people who know how to fight the things that want to hurt you. We're the ones who can live in the places where your enemies might hide. We're the ones who understand that sometimes peace has to be defended." She looked around the chamber at hundreds of alien faces. "The galaxy is bigger than your peaceful corner of it, and it's not all friendly." Jake felt proud of Lisa. She had just explained everything the council needed to know about humans in a way they could understand. Now the question was whether they would listen. Counselor HFY spoke first. "Are you threatening us?" "No," Lisa said calmly. "I'm offering to help you stay alive in a universe that's not as safe as you think it is." The silence that followed was the kind that came before. Big decisions. Jake could see the council members looking at each other, trying to figure out what to do with this information. They were about to learn that the universe had teeth, and humans were the ones who knew how to use them. The council was still debating Lisa's words when the emergency alarm started screaming. Red lights flashed throughout the chamber as a holographic display appeared showing urgent messages from across the galaxy. Jake felt his military training kick in as he read the reports. This was bad. Very bad. "Emergency broadcast from the Gentle Dawn system," announced a mechanical voice. "We are under attack. Repeat, we are under attack. Unknown fleet has entered our space and is firing on our stations." The council chamber erupted in chaos. Aliens who had never heard a real emergency alarm before were panicking. Some were running for the exits. Others were just standing there looking confused. The peaceful order of their meeting had shattered in seconds. More reports flooded in. The attackers were not responding to any communication attempts. They had ignored all requests for peaceful dialogue. They were simply destroying everything in their path and taking prisoners from the wreckage. "Who are they?" Counselor Kresh demanded, his silver petals shaking with fear. "The attackers call themselves the Kethmori Hegemony," reported the station's central computer. "They are broadcasting a simple message on all frequencies: surrender or be destroyed." Jake watched the tactical displays that were now filling the chamber. The Kethmori fleet was massive and well organized. Their ships were built for war, not exploration or trade. These were people who understood violence in a way the Council never had. "How many ships do they have?" Jake asked, his voice cutting through the panic. The computer answered immediately. "Current count shows 237 heavy warships, 412 support vessels, and an estimated 50,000 smaller attack craft." Lisa whistled softly. "That's a serious invasion fleet." The live feed from the Gentle Dawn system showed the reality of war. Cities were burning. Refugee ships were fleeing in all directions. The beautiful orbital stations that had taken centuries to build were being blown apart in minutes. "We must respond immediately," declared Counselor Zephi. "Send our cultural ambassadors to establish communication with these Kethmori. There must be some misunderstanding we can resolve." Jake stared at the energy being in disbelief. "They're destroying entire cities, and you want to send them a greeting card?" "Violence is never the answer," insisted another council member. "There must be underlying reasons for their aggression. Perhaps they feel threatened or misunderstood." On the displays, a Kethmori ship fired on a hospital ship marked with medical symbols. The peaceful vessel exploded in a ball of fire, taking thousands of innocent people with it. "Did you see that?" Jake shouted, pointing at the display. "They just murdered a ship full of doctors and patients. What exactly do you think you're going to talk about with them?" "Perhaps they didn't understand the medical markings," suggested Counselor Kresh. "Different cultures have different symbols." Lisa stepped forward. "The medical symbols are universal. Every species in the galaxy recognizes them. They knew exactly what they were shooting at." More reports came in from other systems. The Kethmori were not just attacking the Gentle Dawn worlds. They had fleets moving on 3 other systems as well. This was not a raid or a misunderstanding. This was a full-scale invasion of Council space. "We should evacuate the threatened areas," suggested a council member who looked like a walking tree. "Give the Kethmori time to work through their aggressive impulses naturally." "Work through their impulses?" Jake could not believe what he was hearing. "They're committing genocide and you want to give them space to do it?" The council's military leader, Admiral Tethrin, finally spoke up. The tall, graceful being had 4 arms and skin like polished metal. "Our peacekeeping fleet has 47 vessels currently in service," he reported. "They are equipped with non-lethal pacification systems designed to calm aggressive individuals." Jake looked at Lisa. "Non-lethal? Our ships can project electromagnetic fields that influence brain chemistry," the Admiral explained. "We can make hostile individuals feel peaceful and cooperative. It works very well on most species." "Most species," Lisa repeated. "What about the ones it doesn't work on?" The Admiral looked uncomfortable. "We have never encountered a species that was completely immune to our pacification technology." Jake studied the tactical data about the Kethmori ships. They were heavily armored and carried weapons designed to punch through thick defenses. Their formation patterns showed military discipline and experience. These were not angry individuals having a bad day. These were professional soldiers following orders. "Your pacification rays won't work on them," Jake said flatly. "How can you be so certain?" asked Counselor Zephi. "Because they're not fighting because they're angry or scared," Jake explained. "They're fighting because they want to win. You can't make someone peaceful if they don't want to be peaceful." The debate continued while more systems fell. The council members argued about the proper response while watching real-time footage of their people dying. Some suggested economic sanctions. Others wanted to form a committee to study Kethmori culture. A few even proposed sending them gifts to show peaceful intentions. Jake had seen enough. He activated his personal communicator and sent an emergency signal to Earth Command. The response came back in less than a minute. UCS Frontier en route. ETA 6 hours. What did you just do? Demanded Counselor Zephi. I called for backup, Jake said simply. You had no authority to do that, Kresh protested. This is council space. Any military action requires our approval. Your approval? Jake pointed at the displays showing burning cities. How long are you going to debate while your people die? The argument was interrupted by another emergency broadcast. The Kethmori fleet was now only 48 hours away from the council station itself. Long-range sensors showed them burning everything in their path as they advanced. We need to make a decision now, Admiral Tethran said. Should I deploy the peacekeeping fleet? With what? Jake asked. 47 ships with non-lethal weapons against 700 warships built for killing? That's not a battle, that's a massacre. Then what do you suggest? Counselor Zephi asked, and for the first time the energy being sounded truly afraid. Jake looked around the chamber at hundreds of alien beings who had never faced a real threat in their lives. They had built a beautiful civilization based on peace and cooperation. But they had forgotten that some people did not want peace. Some people wanted to take what others had built. I suggest you decide whether you want to keep arguing about philosophy while your civilization burns, Jake said, or whether you want to learn how to fight back. The chamber fell silent except for the sound of the emergency alarms and the reports of more systems falling to the Kethmori advance. Lisa stepped up beside Jake. The choice is yours, she said to the council, but you need to make it now before there's nothing left to save. Outside the station, space looked peaceful and empty, but Jake knew that in less than 2 days, it would be full of warships belonging to people who had never heard of the Council's 3,000 years of peace, people who would not care about cultural exchange programs or meditation circles. The real universe was about to arrive at the Council's doorstep, and it had teeth. Admiral Tethran broke the silence. What would humans do in this situation? Jake's answer was simple and direct. We'd fight. We'd fight until we won or until there was nothing left to defend, because some things are worth fighting for. The council members looked at each other with expressions of fear and uncertainty. They were about to make the hardest decision in their civilization's history, and they were running out of time to make it. On the displays, another system fell, to the Kethmori fleet. The counter showing time until their arrival at the council station ticked down, 47 hours and 32 minutes. The galaxy was about to change forever. 6 hours later, the UCS Frontier dropped out of hyperspace near the council station. Jake watched through the observation windows as the human warship took position between the station and the approaching Kethmori fleet. The Frontier was not the biggest ship Jake had ever seen, but it was built like everything humans made, tough, practical, and ready for trouble. Its hull was scarred from battles in places where most ships would have been destroyed. To the council members watching, it looked like a weapon that could think. Captain Sam Rodriguez came aboard the station with a small team of officers. Jake had served with Sam before, and he knew the man was good at his job. Sam was shorter than Jake but carried himself like someone who had won fights against bigger opponents. What's the situation? Sam asked as soon as he reached the council. Chamber. Jake pointed to the tactical displays. Kethmori invasion fleet, 700 ships. They don't negotiate, they don't surrender, and they don't take prisoners unless they need slaves. Sam studied the enemy formation for a few minutes. Ugly, he said finally. But not impossible. What assets do we have? Admiral Tethran stepped forward nervously. The peacekeeping fleet has 47 vessels, but as we explained to your colleagues, our ships are not designed for combat. What are they designed for? Sam asked. Crowd control and emergency rescue, the Admiral replied. Our weapons are non-lethal pacification systems. Sam looked at Jake with an expression that said everything. Then he turned back to the Admiral. Can your ships carry real weapons if we give them some? I suppose so, Tethran said. But we have no experience with lethal combat. Then you're about to get some, Sam said. He turned to address the entire council. Here's the deal. My ship can't fight 700 enemy vessels alone. But if you let me retrofit your fleet with human weapons and tactics, we might have a chance. Counselor Zephi flickered with uncertainty. We have maintained peace for 3,000 years, without resorting to violence. And that's why you're about to lose everything in the next 36 hours, Sam replied bluntly. The Kethmori don't care about your peace. They care about taking your worlds and enslaving your people. On the displays, more refugee ships fled from the advancing enemy fleet. The Kethmori were not just conquering systems, they were destroying everything that made those systems worth living in. What do you need from us? Asked Counselor Kresh, his silver petals trembling. Command authority over all available ships, Sam said. Permission to engage the enemy with lethal force, and the understanding that war is not a debate. It's a problem that needs to be solved quickly. The council members looked at each other with expressions of fear and doubt. They were being asked to abandon everything they believed in. But the alternative was watching their civilization die while they argued about philosophy. The vote was close, but it was unanimous. For the first time in 3,000 years, the Galactic Council authorized unrestricted military action. Sam got to work immediately. Human engineering teams beamed over to the peacekeeping fleet ships and started installing weapons. The aliens watched in amazement as humans turned rescue vessels into fighting ships in a matter of hours. Jake worked with Admiral Tethran to reorganize the fleet using human tactical doctrine. The elegant formations the Council preferred were replaced with combat groups designed to support each other in battle. Your people learn fast, Jake told the Admiral as they watched alien crews practice with their new weapons. We have to, Tethran replied. The alternative is extinction. Lisa spent her time analyzing the Kethmori fleet composition and predicting their attack patterns. Her knowledge of alien biology and psychology helped her figure out how the enemy would fight. They're aggressive but not creative, she reported to Sam. They use overwhelming force in straight-line attacks. It works against species that have never seen real combat, but they have weaknesses we can exploit. The Battle of Kepler 442b began 18 hours later. The Kethmori fleet arrived expecting to find a peaceful space station defended by a few patrol boats. Instead, they ran into a combined force that had been organized by people who understood war. Jake watched from the Frontier's bridge as the battle unfolded. Sam had positioned the Council ships in a defensive formation that looked weak, but was actually a trap. When the Kethmori charged in their usual straight-line attack, they flew right into overlapping fields of fire. The alien crews fought better than anyone expected. 3,000 years of peace had not made them cowards. They just needed someone to show them how to be warriors. Admiral Tethran commanded his ships with growing confidence as the battle continued. The fight lasted 18 hours. When it was over, the Kethmori invasion fleet was scattered and broken. Their command ships were destroyed and the survivors were fleeing back to their own space. The cost was high. 12 Council ships were destroyed, and hundreds of beings died in the fighting, but the alternative would have been the death of entire civilizations. In the aftermath, as rescue ships searched for survivors and engineers repaired damaged stations, the Council faced a new reality. The galaxy was not the peaceful place they had believed it to be. Their survival depended on beings they had once considered barely civilized. Jake stood in the observation deck of the Council station, watching human and alien crews work together to rebuild the defenses. The partnership was awkward, but it worked. Humans provided the knowledge of war while aliens contributed their advanced peaceful technologies. So what happens now? Lisa asked, joining him at the window. Jake watched a group of young aliens learning basic self-defense from a human marine. The elegant beings were fascinated by concepts like situational awareness and tactical thinking. Now we all learn to live in the real universe, Jake said. The one where peace is something you have to fight for, not something that just happens. The Council's formal resolution established the Human Integration Protocol. Humanity received full membership in the Galactic Council with special status as military advisors and frontier specialists. Human colonies could expand to any unclaimed death worlds, and human ships had free passage through all Council space. More importantly, the Council began the long process of learning that civilization needed guardians. They established the Integrated Defense Force, combining human tactics with alien technology and council resources. The galaxy had changed. The peaceful species who thought they had evolved beyond violence learned that their safety had always depended on others being willing to fight for them. The humans who came as observers left as protectors and partners. As the human delegation prepared to return to Earth, Counselor HFY approached Jake with something that might have been humility. "We were wrong about your species," the energy being admitted. "We thought your capacity for violence made you dangerous to civilization." Jake nodded thoughtfully. "You weren't wrong about the dangerous part. The mistake was thinking civilization could exist without people willing to be dangerous when it matters." Two humans had entered a council meeting as curiosities to be studied and contained. They left as the guardians of a civilization that had forgotten how to guard itself. The partnership that emerged would reshape the galaxy, bringing together the ideals of peace with the reality of its cost. Nobody, human or alien, left the meeting the same as they had entered. The universe had shown its teeth, and the galaxy had learned that sometimes you need Deathworlders to keep paradise safe. In the end, it took people from the most dangerous world in the galaxy to teach everyone else how to stay alive in a universe that did not care about their philosophical preferences, and that made all the difference.